Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're watching from. Thank you for joining our College Week Live Platform Q webcast. Tonight's topic is Meet the Parents. You'll be hearing from a panel of parents of current Landmark College students about their experiences, about their students' journeys, how they found Landmark College, what their triumphs and challenges have been. And you can ask questions at any time. If you're watching us on Platform Q, please type your questions into the Q&A box, and we will field those at the end for the panelists. If you're watching us on Facebook, just type in a comment, and I'll be monitoring all those and collecting those for our presenters. So with that, I am going to start. You'll be seeing some slides go by tonight of our students and families, and I'm going to start by going to Sherman, who joins us from Alameda, California tonight. Her son, Micah, very exciting, is graduating with his bachelor's degree in about 9 days, I think. So take it away, Sherry.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Well, hi, everyone, all over. You're all over. I'm really at the end of my official journey with Landmark, and I say official because I think we will always as a family be part of Landmark and be connected in some way. And I thought a lot about, I've done a couple of these different panels over the years, and I've thought a lot about what to say. And it runs through my mind like an incredible amount of things that my son has learned and grown in pretty marvelous ways at Landmark. So Micah started straight from high school. He was someone who was never going to leave home. Now remember, we're in the Bay Area, we're in the San Francisco Bay Area, so we were very far from Landmark. And he was going to go to community college, he was going to do all those things, but he was going to live at home forever. I'm an East Coaster, and we were back in the New England area, and on a whim, in the August before his senior year, I suggested that we go to Landmark and look at it. And as is really kind of indicative of Landmark, I literally just picked up the phone. There were no students there. There was hardly anybody there. It was that week in August when everybody was on break, and someone in admissions said, sure, come on over. And Micah and I did. My husband and younger son were with us, and they went somewhere else. And I don't remember the name of the admissions person, but what I do remember is the minute we walked on campus, Micah said to me, this is where I'm going to go to college. And, you know, my son loves the accoutrements. He loves the sweatshirts and the hats and the t-shirts. So I, of course, said to him, I'll buy you the sweatshirt anyhow. You don't have to make this decision. But he stuck to it. And we came home, and he worked with a college counselor, actually a college counselor who specializes in students with various different kinds of special needs. And there were 4 colleges, all on the East Coast. Sadly, at that point, we didn't have many on the West Coast that really address students with special needs. Micah's official diagnosis is nonverbal learning disorder, which is a pretty complicated one, not yet completely figured out. It's got many levels to it. We looked at 4. We came to the East Coast. We did 4 colleges, 3 days, and we spent the whole day at Landmark. It was obviously pre-COVID many years ago when we could spend the whole day there. And he ended up applying to 2 colleges, Landmark College and Mitchell College, which Mitchell is in Connecticut and also has fabulous support systems. In fact, their learning center now, is really modeled after Landmark's approach. The main difference is, at least at that point, I don't know what's going on now, is the teachers didn't teach differently, most of them, but there was a huge amount of resources. And Micah, since he was 11 years old, has been an avid golfer, always wanted to be on a golf team. The school he went to in high school did not have a golf team. Mitchell had a golf team. Micah was accepted to both Landmark and Mitchell. Mitchell heavily recruited him, including a very impressive scholarship. And we left the decision up to Micah, and both of them I thought would have worked. And he said, Landmark is where I need to go. And for him to give up golf and being on a golf team, there was something inside of him that knew. And it has been a pretty amazing experience for my son. He's grown. He was always a great kid. He's grown into, sorry about that, an amazing young man. He has been pushed and challenged in ways that I didn't even think was possible. The summer before, August before he left, I got in touch with the director of admissions at that point and asked her if there were other California students that were coming, and if so, we would be willing to host, which we subsequently called a meet and greet, for them to come to our house so the students can meet and the parents can meet. And that summer we had 7. We've done it every year since. Sometimes we have 15 from all over the place. And obviously last summer we had to do it remotely, but it was an amazing experience for all of us. The students could meet each other, the parents could meet each other. And that began my relationship with Landmark. Dr. Eden, the president of the college, happened to be here at that point. And so we went out to dinner with him the next night. And my husband and I were thinking, how amazing that our son is sitting with the president of a college. And, how often does that happen? And what happened is that Dr. Eden and Micah developed this incredible relationship. And he, as I've told Dr. Eden many, many times, he has been a mentor. One of the ways my son learns is by watching and observing people. And he would meet with Dr. Eden almost every single week, maybe for 3 minutes, maybe for 5 minutes, but he would check in with him for years. And they still see each other a lot. Micah had a very, very difficult transition, which surprised him. He was incredibly homesick, brutally homesick. And he fortunately was under the watchful eye of many people, including Dr. Eden, as well as at that point, the VP for development, who's no longer there. So as worried as we were about him, and my husband and I made the decision to tell him he needed to stay there, even though he did the research on how he could come home and go to a community college and save money. And we decided to tell him he had to stay there for an associate's degree. He didn't have to go for a bachelor's. And it was rough. It was very rough. There were some F's there. There were some D's there. There were lots of tears. He had a very, very difficult roommate the first semester. But it was the first time I could say, since Micah was diagnosed at 5 years old, that I wasn't worried about him. I was concerned, but I felt he was safe and that he would get pushed and challenged in all kinds of ways. And he has soared. He has tried things he never would thinking of trying. I mean, Landmark, and I've said in one of the other panels too, Landmark is not perfect. I mean, there have been mistakes made by advisors and professors and administrators. But one of the beauties is that it's transparent. In my experience, at least, there has never been a cover-up. There's been, wow, that was a mistake. And so Mike has learned that even people in high positions who are very educated can make mistakes. And if you admit the mistakes, then everybody learns from it. At the end of his freshman year, he told us he was going for a bachelor's. And he is graduating May 22nd with a bachelor's in communication and entrepreneur leadership. There's many sad parts about leaving Landmark. The main one is it's unfortunate that the world isn't more like Landmark, that it is an amazingly accepting place. And I think that's how any of us grow, if you truly feel accepted and cared for. So I'm going to stop because I know I could go on for about an hour, and Mark's keeping a very good look, but I can just stop.
That's great, Sherry. And I just want to back up that Micah really has become a true leader on campus. And and I've been at the college about 8 years, and I've known Micah most of that time and the time that he's been there. And he's really blossomed in the way, he was a little more reticent, I think, in the earlier years. And he's really a respected leader now. So thank you for that story.
Thank you, Mark, for telling me that.
Of course. So next we're going to go to Jason Steinbaum and Miriam Clyman from Mclean, Virginia, and their son, Zach, is also graduating on May 22nd, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he's graduating with his associate degree. So take it away, Miriam and Jason.
Hi, everyone. Glad you could join us. And I remember when we were deciding what to do, and it was just such an overwhelming process. Our situation was very different than Sherry's. We were not considering other schools. There were no scholarships offered. And I'll back up. Zach has always been different. When I was pregnant, he kicked in utero all the time. He's a kinetic ball of energy and constant motion. He said we can share. He has ADHD and some anxiety. And we say he lives in Zachland, which is his own little universe. And sometimes it resembles ours and sometimes it doesn't. But he was always different. He was always smart, but different. He's young. He's an August 2nd birthday, and we were told to give him the gift of time, but he was reading in preschool. So that didn't seem necessary, but in retrospect, maybe, I don't know. But he was just different, energetic. And first we thought it was fine, but as he went through the schools are not designed, they're designed for kids who sit quietly. And so from the very beginning, there were some issues. And it wasn't until he was older that he realized that he was annoying other kids, or other kids told him, or he didn't fit in. And he was fine academically until middle school, where there were so many classes and he could focus on one thing, but not multiple things. And he would start out with A's and end up with D's. And then we would have to do the, round up the teachers. What do we need and whatever. And at the high school, we were told, back off, he needs to do this himself. And then everything plummeted. He had an IEP, of course, and we have lots of professionals. Things came to a head senior year, where at one point he was, we were supposed to start the whole college process, and we found him in the garage crying. And he said, I can't do this. I'm not like the other kids. And that was really tough. And we okay, because how much pressure do you put on? And is he ready for school? Is he not going to make it at school? And we weren't sure what to do. At the same time, he was failing 5 classes. And again, this is a smart kid who did great on the SATs. And we contacted the school and we said, we need help. And his case manager at school sent us an email saying, Zach is lazy. Don't blame it on ADHD. Land the helicopters, dock the rescue boats, let him fail. And we're not wallflowers, but we thought we had been advocates. In retrospect, we might have done something differently. The school is one of the 100 top high schools in the country. For some reason, we thought that might make a difference. And I have a friend whose mom is a retired college counselor, and my friend was tired of hearing me complain. She said, my mom's coming to town. Bring Zach, bring his grades, bring his test scores. Zach meets with this woman. This is December 31st. And we have no idea what's happening the next year. She looks at him and she's like, Zach, what's the deal? Why is there such a difference? He's like, well, I can't focus. I have a hard time. And she looked at him and she said, are you willing to work? He said, yeah. She said, Landmark. And we're like, what the heck is Landmark? And we'd never heard of it. We have plenty of supports. We've done lots of IEPs and lots of, this specialist and that specialist. Like, what's Landmark? And we call it's Landmark College, the school for students who learn differently. And if any of you have called multiple times, yes, we know the school for students who learn differently. But it's not just students who learn differently. Everything is different. And someone said, just come up and visit. And we were hooked. It was extraordinary because instead of Zach, we were like, does he need a special school? Could he go to a regular school? Do we really want him to be identified this way? And it was more, could he benefit from this extraordinary place? What sealed it for him was he's a soccer player. There's a relatively new soccer field with coconut husks or something. Anyway, he had his interview. He goes down, there are kids playing. And at another school, they might not have let him play. Instead, they stopped. Who are you? You're looking at the school. We go here, join us. And he kicked off his loafers and rolled up his khakis. And he was playing in his socks on the field. And that's when he decided it was the right place. And it has been extraordinary. Not that there haven't been, as Sherry said, ups and downs and challenges, but it's a special place. And as this one counselor said, she said he needs to be at a school where anyone on campus, any faculty member will be able to say, oh, hey, Zach, how's that paper coming along? Everyone will know, and it will be a supportive environment. And he has flourished. He's become a leader, and he is graduating with an associate's degree and transferring to a Virginia State school where he was accepted with a scholarship. And he also made dean's list. And again, this is the kid who was failing 5 classes and the school told us to let him fail. What's extraordinary about Landmark is that so many kids and so many parents have been told that they wouldn't make it, that they couldn't do it. And Landmark is an example of what kids can do if they're given the opportunity.
Thank you, Miriam. And I have a fun story about Zach. He was recently in a video that we did for our accepted students, and I hadn't met Zach before, but so we did our interview, and he was so excited to be in the video. He really likes advocating and doing things like that. And he said, maybe you could get some video of me on the soccer field, and maybe you could get some video of me on the basketball court. And we were like, yes, absolutely. And this was when obviously we still have some COVID restrictions, but we went into the Click Center where the basketball court is. And I said, you can take your mask off for this. And he was so excited. That was like the highlight of his day. He ripped his mask off and he started shooting baskets for us on video. So it was really fun. He's a really fun guy to be around. So thank you for that story. And Jason, did you have something?
He made you re-record it 3 times until he hit the jump shot, right? That would be him.
We kept it going. Yeah, it didn't take him too long. But so next we have Patricia Yee, and Patricia joins us from Brooklyn, New York, and her daughter Nicole is a current student at Landmark, and Nicole is a bridge student, which I'm sure Pat will tell you all about, who came to us from Rhode Island School of Design. So Pat, I'll turn things over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. Yes, my daughter is a bridge student. She's been at Landmark for 2 semesters, and this September she'll return back to Rhode Island School of Design to finish her senior year. So Nicole was actually only diagnosed 2 years ago, and it has been a journey of self-discovery for her. Before her diagnosis, it seemed like she kept going in circles. Maybe it was more like going through a corn maze and hitting a dead end and then having to restart again. And nothing seemed to make sense. She was active in leading school activities at school, and she would attend all her classes. She would attempt to do all her homeworks, and she would start out strong. But then she would struggle to finish her projects. A lot of times not being able to finish and not really knowing why, what was her obstacles. It was just so many questions. And it wasn't all her classes either. And she was struggling and she was starting to feel isolated. Teachers were kind of starting to say, don't try so hard, don't overthink it. And classmates were starting to say, she was not dependable and she was lazy. And, she had some support from some administrators, especially the disability support services on campus and some teachers, but still it wasn't enough to fill a void. And we just felt like we were spinning in a cycle, just going downhill. And then about a year and a half ago, it just happened that the Dean of Student Affairs from RISD and an administrator from Landmark attended a conference together. And the dean knew of Landmark, but she didn't really think about Nicole until she went to this conference and was speaking to this administrator who I don't remember who it was. And she thought about Nicole. So when she came back, she encouraged Nicole to come and visit the campus. So it just happened. There was an open house in December, and we came. And as soon as we stepped on campus, Nicole knew she had to come. She had to at least experience Landmark and for what it offered her. She has enjoyed meeting other neurodivergent students. That I think has been the best thing of her experience this past 2 semesters. Hearing other stories from other students, sharing and supporting each other has been a huge highlight. And so she's made a lot of friends, and also all the professors, administrators of Landmark, so encouraging, so supportive. So besides, the support, she's enjoyed the campus. Yes, we're from, New York City, Providence, RISD's in Providence, both cities. So this has been kind of also experience for her, going on hiking trails, enjoying nature, just spending a quiet moment, enjoying the views. And, it gives her a moment to self-reflect. You don't have all the other things happening around you. And so with the support of friends, her peers, administrators, she's learned a lot about her strengths and weaknesses. Another thing she's enjoyed that, Landmark has provided her access with so many support services like social coaching, academic support, and like academic coaching. She's participated in the peers program, both her first and second semester. This semester, the program is kind of geared towards student leaders. So she's learned a lot about that. She's learned strategies that works best for her. So anyway, her journey will continue this September, and she's so grateful for what she's learned and the opportunities at Landmark. I believe she will, hit a few more dead ends, but I think the most important thing is she knows she's not by herself anymore.
Thank you, Pat. And I know that even in that short time that Nicole's been at Landmark, she's gotten pretty involved with things. We'll come back a little bit and talk about internships afterwards, but I know she's been an intern with the Center for Neurodiversity, and she emerged in that role pretty quickly in just the year that she spent at the college. Before we talk about that, I want to turn it over to our last set of parents. And Kari and Richard Hayden are here from Needham, Massachusetts tonight. And their son, Peter, was also a bridge student, but he was a bridge student during the summer session last year, which is sort of a compressed session that I'm sure Kari will tell you a little bit about. So take it away, Kari. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi,
how are you doing?
So Peter attended the summer session at 23 years of age. We had actually visited the college, I think 2 or 3 years before that, and we liked it. He probably wasn't ready. But just to give you a little backstory on Peter, it seemed like he struggled with school from day one. I was always talking to the teacher after school. And then at 6th grade, he was diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, and then later on we realized that it was severe inattentive ADHD. He, as of 6th grade, had many support classes. He knew he was smart, but he would get terrible grades. He just would do the homework that was due the next week and forget the homework that was due the next day. So things kind of snowballed for him, and as high school went along, he was accruing more and more absences. I think he was just very discouraged. He was giving up, and he didn't graduate on time. So he ended up taking some classes at Mass Bay Community College nearby, and he just barely got those requirements done. He didn't do that well there. So I think as parents, we recognized, and we were trying to support him all through this. We did make a couple of changes for ourselves. We made the decision not to say anything negative, which is hard. And then we read a great book, Setting Boundaries with Your Adult Children by Allison Bottke, Bottke. I highly recommend that if you're in this situation. And then last summer he attended Landmark. But when we, did you have anything to add?
Oh, and I think one of the things we learned as parents with a child in this situation is learning to use other resources, other people to help, and also what it means to develop scaffolding around your child so that you're not doing direct intervention, but you're simply setting up either emotionally or cognitively a way to let him or her know that you're available should they need you. You're not that far away, like a scaffolding on a building. But they still have to do the work themselves. They still have to perform. So, we pick whoever we met with, we try to soak in something so we could help ourselves and help Peter.
Yes. Yeah. So last summer was a great summer for Peter, even though it was COVID, which made it, I think, not the best, socially it was not, Peter's social. So I think he would have liked being more social, but I think that Landmark did what they could to connect the students. And, but I think that the professors were really amazing. I would say that the staff had great expectations of him, or just realistic expectations of him. They supported him. They believed in Peter, and they also challenged him. He learned how to address his learning disability, I think, in a fresh way that has enabled him to take those ideas and apply them to his life. Overall, it was a healthy restart for Peter. And I think it helped being away from home too, even though he's been away from home before. And I just wanted to go back to what impressed us about Landmark when we visited a few years before that. We found that I was just so impressed with the students and how transparent they were about their sharing their challenges, but yet they all talked about rising above them. And, it was great stories to hear about how that they had made Landmark work for them. And I think they were also accepting and inclusive. We like that a lot. So Peter, now we are just absolutely thrilled. He has a job supporting COVID-19 products. He has many responsibilities. He's been innovative on the job, and he's handled some difficult situations. He's also decided to pursue computer science. And he actually, while he was working last fall, he took a class at another community college and he did well. It was just like, this was a great restart for him. And then he's now living on his own with friends just outside of Boston. So yeah, we're very thankful.
So we think that the Summer Bridge program is, you wonder when and how you're going to be able to launch your adolescent. And I think the summer program for Peter at Landmark was part of that preparation to launch.
Yeah.
That's a great success story. And you talked about him overcoming challenges. I think just coming last summer when COVID was happening had to be a pretty big challenge for him to overcome. Because it's a short program. It's, I think, 5 weeks in the summer. And, to come in and have to immerse himself into that in such a short time. But it sounds like he really thrived in that, despite those challenges. So that's really nice to hear. Thank you, Kari and Richard. So I'm gonna field throw some questions at our panelists. I wanted to talk a little bit about internships, and I know that at least two of the students whose parents are here did internships. So Sherry and Pat, I know both Micah and Nicole have done pretty successful internships. And Miriam and Jason, I'm not sure if Zach has, but you can feel free to answer this too. But I thought maybe Sherry and Pat could tell us a little bit about those experiences.
Okay, I can start. And I think this is a great example of what Landmark is. Micah wanted to do an internship either with the fire department or the police department. And Landmark had not had a relationship with either one of those organizations. But there was no question that they would try. And Jonathan, who is one of the career counselors, I'm not sure, Mark, what his official title is, but there's a whole wonderful career center there. He worked really hard. And not only did he get in touch with the chief of police, it ended up the fire department could not do it, just couldn't handle it. Putney's very small, and it's a very small primary volunteer fire department. But the police chief was open to it. I know again, this is in the midst of COVID, heavy duty COVID, because this was starting in July. And they got it set up. And then Jonathan worked with Micah on his resume. He already had one, but on learning the different resumes you create when you're applying for different things, how to prepare for interviews. So it wasn't just setting up an internship. It was, how do you do this? And it was great. And he did an internship there. He learned a lot, and it was a great experience. And then my understanding, it also has now, since, I don't know if anybody else wants to do it, but there now is a good relationship with Landmark and the Brattleboro Police. So it was great, but it is an example of, there rarely, in my experience, is there a firm no. There, if a student requests something, there may be, it may not work, or it goes beyond our ability, but the openness, I think, is everywhere.
That's such a great story. And I recently interviewed a recent alum, Rhiannon Graywolf, who had a similar story. She wanted to do an internship at a museum, and one of our art professors was on the board of the Brattleboro Museum, and there hadn't been an internship relationship previously, and they were able to get that going, in a very short amount of time. And Rhiannon is now actually an employee there. She was hired just a few months ago. So Pat, I know that Nicole has interned with our Center for Neurodiversity, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I mean, she was asked to intern at the Neurodiversity Center, and her experience there has, she basically works a few hours once per week, but she also leads a club on Wednesday night where it's an open forum for students to come and discuss different topics about neurodiversity. So every Wednesday, she and some other students from the Neurodiversity Center leads this open forum. I think this internship has kind of shaped, how she's going to proceed, going forward with her life. Her major at RISD is industrial design, which is very broad, and you can basically take it where you want. After this experience and after this internship, I believe she's going to head down the path of neurodiversity and how it relates to industrial design and how the world would, see different products in this kind of lens. So it's been a wonderful internship. And, it's wonderful that she got that opportunity. And yes, she's, only been there 2 semesters. So it has been a very fortunate that she got this opportunity. So yes.
Yeah. Hi, Mark. It's Jason. Zach also did an internship. He was involved in working on an educational game for neurodiverse students, which was supported by the National Science Foundation. It's been great for him in a number of ways. He's enjoyed the work in that way, but it's also been good for helping him learn a balance between his schoolwork and other types of activities. One of the things that he developed over time was the ability to take on more responsibilities. So he came there just being able to get through the classwork and squeaking through that. And by the time he's finishing up now his 2 years, his associate's degree, he started a student group. He's been like the captain of the soccer team there, and he's working on this internship program. So he's been doing that even as his grades have gone up. So what Landmark has allowed him to do with this is to give him additional challenges while still providing the structure around it so that he can learn to balance his academics, his outside work and his avocations and his friends. So I kind of put it all in that one bigger context.
That's great. Thank you for jumping in. I forgot that Zach had told me about the internship he did, and he also started the club you mentioned. I think it was it a gaming club, or it was related to
Hillel, a Jewish group on campus.
I think he does that too. He has like a group that he does that with, but he started the Hillel, which is a Jewish students group.
Zach has a lot of energy, and he's always been in constant motion, but now he has a way to channel that, which is wonderful.
So if you can channel it, and you can predict what's next with your schoolwork, where you have to be, all these things that all of us know are executive function, right? I would never have known what that is were we not to have a kid who needed to talk about executive function.
He doesn't want to talk about it. He just needed help.
Right. So these were the things that helped him learn that he can do it, and learn that and figure out ways of using the skills necessary to line up his assignments, line up his activities.
Great. Thank you very much. I wanted to go back to something Richard said earlier about scaffolding, because that's a word we like executive function that we use a lot at Landmark. And I was hoping, anyone can jump in. Maybe Richard and Kari can start, but talk about, some of that scaffolding that you actually saw happening for your student at Landmark, and how, some of the supports that really helped them.
Well, I think a large part of it was, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of letting your student fail, or letting your student take on more responsibility, letting your child rather be more responsible, though we don't want to see them do poorly or fail. So that was sort of like, okay, we have to, so it's sort of like a scaffolding with a tension wire. You're sort of on a wire that you want to be there and available for them, but you have to be far enough back that you're not in the way. And Kari has done more direct involvement with Peter, being she was a stay-at-home mom with our children, and was much appreciated because it was a challenge. And with the kids, with Peter not being in school, and that's you want to see your kid in school and try to succeed, and it wasn't happening. So as I mentioned earlier, we through different resources. That was probably one of the more useful ones, the concept of scaffolding, and it took a few years after that to get to this point, but I think that was probably the most useful concept for me personally.
I mean, I think what I really enjoy seeing, I know Nicole really enjoys, is, yes, the scaffolding of Landmark. And it's the unseen scaffolding where everyone, it's obvious, works together. The professors, the administrators, the coaches, the writing center, they all, I mean, I realize the school is small, but they just seem to know exactly each child and their needs, or what supports they need. I mean, just a little story of Nicole. I said, make sure you take advantage of any support that the school offers. You're only there for a short time. And she says, I'm going to go to the writing center, and I'm going, have my paper looked at. And as she, went to the writing center to meet for the first time, that person already had a sample of her writing from previously, because her advisor knew she was going down there and had given. So that person already knew Nicole's writing strengths and weaknesses even before Nicole showed up. And we were very impressed with that. But, I mean, Nicole has used, social coaching, academic coaching, the writing center. There's so much. And I think another great opportunity is every time the students meet with another adult, is another relationship, someone else that they can trust.
I think, it's interesting to listen to this piece on scaffolding, because we were first introduced to it when Micah was very little. He had a lot of, as many of the students had, a lot of resources and services. I'm a psychologist, so I had tentacles in all different areas to get him support. But it's interesting to see over the years how that word has taken on different meaning and different services, from, breaking things, because he used to he made lists before he knew how to write. And now I just see, as Mike is going to, actually the day after graduation, he will turn 24. So I see also as he matures and, as Mark was saying, as he's taken on more different kind of roles, he's done many, many things at Landmark, many jobs and different things, but how he's now working with a writing coach, someone that we got through Landmark, but is not an employee of Landmark. We hired him separately, and he has for the last year. And that's been an amazing experience for him in terms of different kind of connecting and scaffolding and organization in writing a paper. So, as his brain develops, as we know, things don't develop quickly, necessarily, particularly students with learning differences. It would be curious, and I'm actually going to ask him what he would understand that to mean, at this point in his life. But with all the supports of Landmark, we found this writing coach. Micah is someone who did not utilize the Drake Center, the Learning Center. And as you can imagine, it's been numerous arguments over the years. And, I think it partly was Micah, and I think it partly was the model of the Drake Center. Micah's a relationship-oriented person, and he really needed kind of a person in a different relationship. But he's figured it out and has found out what works for him in life. And that's because there is no shame at Landmark to any student. There is no shame. If it doesn't work for you, let's figure out what does work for you.
Thank you, everyone. Miriam and Jason, did you want to add anything?
Sorry. I'll add something quickly. When we went to Landmark for parents or family weekend, which I know doesn't happen in person during COVID, but this was before that, Zach was like flourishing. And then we started asking ourselves, well, could he have just gone to a regular school? Did he need to go to Landmark? And he's not taking advantage of these resources that so many fights, like, we're paying tuition, you will do this. Nah, I'm busy. And his advisor very gently explained that there's visible and invisible scaffolding. And that even if you don't see it, even if it's not obvious, there are things. For example, she told him about a job opportunity at the Drake Center, which is the additional help center and the writing center. And she told him about the National Science Foundation funded internship. And we can just say, hey, Zach, internship, Zach, have you applied? Zach, what about this? And she just sent an email saying, can you just, it was over vacation. I sent this to Zach as well. Just wanted to make sure you saw that the deadline is this date. Not, hey, you've had 3 weeks. What are you doing? But just a gentle reminder. And that's not going to happen at other places. And it didn't take much, and she didn't fill out the forms for him, but just the, hey, here's the deadline. And, including us on it, just in case he wasn't checking his email, which he wasn't, because kids don't check email, they do text. So that's just an example, lots of scaffolding. And it's also a teeny place, so people do know what's going on, and do look out for one another.
Those are all great examples. Thank you. So I want to ask one of the common questions we get asked. I think you're all either in decent sized cities or near decent sized cities. And, when a student's looking at Landmark, it's in a very small town in Vermont. And that can be a culture shock, and it can be something that people are reluctant about. Pat, you talked a little bit about Nicole really finding the nature, the trails to be a plus for her. But I wonder if some of you could talk about, any adjustments that needed to happen when your student got to Putney, or how it's been a plus.
Peter loved the environment around Landmark. He loves the outdoors, and to celebrate finishing the bridge program, he jumped off a bridge over the Connecticut River and he went to Peter Devon's for dinner. So, but he really enjoyed the outdoors there. It was
I went up one weekend, one day to go fishing with him, and that's when he saw other mostly men that I know of, young men, jumping off the bridge. So that's probably where that idea came from. We didn't catch anything, but we had a great afternoon.
I've heard that happens, but the bridge jumping, but I've never witnessed it. So.
But you are absolutely not going to tell our son about bridge jumping. It's like, no bridge jumping.
I think for Micah it was the perfect place. I mean, we are in the Bay Area. We're not right in San Francisco, but we're right out of San Francisco. But I think that was the first draw. It's calm. He could stand in the middle of the quad and see the whole campus. And for my son, who part of nonverbal learning disorder is kind of being hyper aroused, it's just a calming place. I mean, you look out the window and you're looking at nature, even if your room and your dorm is over the parking lot or the street. And he loves Putney. He wanted to stay in Putney, He always said, what a perfect place it would be for him. And he's not, he didn't need to go city life or party. He's not a partying kid. So for him, I mean, it got, at times, okay, this is getting pretty boring, Mom. What can we do and where can we go? But it was a big transition moving from the Bay Area to New England in terms, I mean, he'd been to the East Coast a lot, but in terms of weather and transitioning that. But for him, it was the quiet and the nature was really soothing for him always.
Yeah, I think I know from Nicole, she's taken advantage of bike riding too around the campus, and the school has bikes to lend, including also the sledding. I saw that she was doing a lot of sledding, and the school also has sleds that kids could borrow. I think one of the highlights for her was when those sled dogs came to campus, and she. Many pictures of the puppy. And I basically said, better not see that puppy in your dorm room tonight. But yes, the nature of it, I think, as Sherry mentioned, the calmness and especially with this COVID-19 restrictions, you only see the campus, but basically everything around it is also landmark. So the opportunity to just hike in the woods and just experience that it's been wonderful. Thank you.
And Pat, I was going to ask you to expand a little bit too. You talked a little bit about the peers program and social pragmatics that Nicole has benefited from. And I know for a lot of our families and students who are looking, the social piece is a big thing. Some students have had a lot of trouble making friends and figuring out how to navigate social situations. So would you mind talking a little bit about that and how that's worked for Nicole?
I guess that's a two-part question. I mean, the peers program meets once a week, and it's a really great program. They basically take it step by step, starting with, what defines a friend, and the different stages of friendship and how you can tell, or what maybe you can't tell, but what indications that would be that, it's a friend. What is also nice is the program has a parent portion of it. So every Tuesday night, there is a presentation. So as parents that have students that are part of this program, we get to see what they learned that week. And of course, we don't hear the responses because the kids are responding to these questions, but at least we know what the kind of buzzwords are, the keywords that they use. And especially if your child is speaking to you, you can use those buzzwords to kind of help them and support them. So that's been very helpful. And this semester, they started another peers where it's for student leaders. So Nicole joined that, and that was very beneficial for her because, the first part was defining what is, and this seems to be more why. And I think for her, because she's been trying to answer many questions about herself, the why part has been very benefit for her. But as far as making friends, I mean, this past year with the COVID restrictions, again, just being in an open landscape, they're able to, socialize. She is living in Davis Hall, which tends to be most of the kids there belong to the peers program. So right there, they do have common interests, I should say. And the support has been great. And actually, she became an RA for just this semester for Davis. And that has been a great experience for her, too, because now she feels she can support and give back to these students that have supported her this semester. I mean, it's a constant give and take. And I think that's been the best thing.
Super. Thank you so much, Pat. Question, as you were talking about being an RA, I know there are a lot of opportunities for students to become a resident assistant, but I wanted to ask about experiences with residential life, because that's also, really built into the Landmark College model and experience of what we call the living and learning experience. So just wanted to ask if anyone has any, insights about how that has informed their students' experience at Landmark, living in a residence hall and what kind of support they get there. And it's okay if no one has anything. I just pull that question out. So.
Well, Peter did have an instance where there was a noisy guy next door to him, and he said something, and they addressed it. So I think very well, and so we appreciate that. Yeah. So,
as Micah had a really, really difficult first semester there, his freshman year with the roommate. It was a complicated, difficult situation that, and I would say he got an enormous amount of support in trying to get it resolved. That student eventually left Landmark. But it was, it was a learning for him about asking for help. It escalated to the point that it was apparent that other people needed to intervene. The student was having difficulty in different parts of the campus. But it made me think, Mark, and we haven't mentioned this, so I want to before we end, about us as parents being able to step back with our students being at Landmark. That most of us, I'll speak for myself only, had to be heavily involved in Micah's life education from the time he was diagnosed at 5 years old. And, I'm someone who has a particular issue with us being called helicopter parents, because it feels like it's blaming us. Whereas if the systems were different, we wouldn't have to do that if the system really met our child's needs. And my experience, and it made me think of this also because of that roommate situation, I never intervened at all. It was pretty bad. Micah wasn't in physical danger, but it was pretty bad. I talked to his advisor about it several times, because that is a very open relationship, particularly in the beginning. But in the years that Micah has been there, I've never talked to a single professor. I've never called one. I made that kind of commitment to myself and told Micah I am stepping back. And I have talked to advisors. I certainly met many, Mark included, many people on campus, because I've been involved on campus. But it is a pretty amazing how, for me, it was needing to educate myself to be able to step back. I am not of the belief of, a kid, they just need to fail because then they learn from it, because I know my son, I don't know about other people's kids, have failed a lot as a result of having learning differences, both socially and academically and all ways. So yes, he's failed some classes at Landmark. He's had to take some over. He's had some struggles. But again, other than speaking with his advisor when things were really tough, or if I was worried about him, have let him find his way and have felt very secure in Landmark doing that in all ways, in every way, in terms of support and caring and love, quite honestly, and safety and challenge, a lot of challenge. So.
Thank you for bringing that up, Sherry. That's a really nice segue, because I wanted to close with a question for all of you. As you know, what kind of advice would you give to parents who are looking at Landmark and thinking about having their student come here? And I think what you just said is some great advice in general, but I wonder if anyone else would like to add something to that.
I sounds like not to be put off by the size of the school is a big thing. I mean, it's a small school, rural environment. It may not look that glossy compared to other campuses with large endowments or whatever. But I mean, just listening to what has been happening to the students tonight, and that means a lot more than what you could ever imagine, possibly somewhere else. Yeah, so look at the people rather than the steel beams and the brick walls or whatever.
Yeah, I think I wanted to add that, again, we've only been at Landmark for a short time, but the acceptance of each person for who they are and what they could be is the amazing thing of the school. And it reflects, how each child, the journey of their schooling and of life, does go back to everyone that has touched the students' lives on campus. And I think the whole thing about everyone working together, which you don't see at other schools, it's sometimes they work individually, but it's so obvious that the invisible scaffolding that Sherry was talking about is so evident. I mean, it may be invisible for the kids, but as a parent, you can see how everything works together. And then now that Nicole is a RA, I even see how the resident director and the RAs also work together to support the students, in the big picture. So I'm forever grateful and thankful for Landmark.
Miriam and Jason, did you want to add anything? You don't have to, but if you want.
At an early parent session, someone with Landmark told all of us parents, back to the helicopter parent, she looked at us and she said, "You have been called helicopter parents. You are not helicopter parents. You are Black Hawk helicopter parents. If you've gotten your kids to this step, you have been doing so much." And she said, "This is where you stop." And she said, "Yes, your kids will fail. And when they do, we will know where to come in and how to support them, because we'll know where they need the reinforcement." And we practice things. Are you an enabler? Are you a rescuer? And we practice like how to say, "Gosh, who can you go to at school?" And I would say that at the same time, our son doesn't like to make a fuss, and it's not always obvious when he needs help. And we have stepped in because when people haven't been responsive. So yes, it's a wonderful school. Yes, the people care, but when you know something's not right, it's still like any other place where sometimes you need to wave a flag and say, "Hey, we need help." And when we've done that, people have responded immediately. So just trust your gut on that, because at the beginning I'm like, I can't call the advisor, and I can call and speak to the advisor, but Zach has to be on the call and Zach has to be on the email. So I can express my concerns, but it's very neat how that is done, where I can't take over, but I can certainly voice concerns and work with them. So that's been helpful, both that let him do this on his own, but then when I'm like, "Help," okay. Even though my husband's like, "Please don't do that." But so just trust your, and Zach saying, "Please, Mom, don't. Just trust your gut on that stuff."
Well, thank you all very much. This was a great panel, and thank you to our viewers. And this will also be archived on our Facebook page if you'd like to share it with anyone. And we will have a recording that we will send out afterwards, so for anyone who missed it. But thank you all. These are great stories to share, and your students are all wonderful assets for the college, and you've all done a great job. So thank you very much. Have a good night, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.